Hello everyone, my name is Elena, aka Minty Mito, and if you're new here, welcome, and if you're not, welcome back to my channel where I do fun art challenges and talk about whatever's on my mind. And today I want to talk about a few things, mainly art studies, why they're important, and how you can make them fun. Because I don't know about you guys, but the thought of doing things like art studies, figure studies, any studies at all really gives me that feeling of annoyance and dread. Like I'm trying to do something that I know is good for me, but is also super boring, like working out or eating more vegetables or drinking more water. Like I get it, I'm dehydrated, it's ruining my life, whatever. But just like with anything else, the key, or at least a key, to doing those boring things you don't want to do is to find a way to make it fun. I recently listened to the audiobook Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal, and one point that he really hammers home in that book is what would this look like if it were fun? So that's what I want to help you guys out with today, turning art studies from a boring exercise that you have to do into a delightful activity that you want to do. And as a fun bonus, I'll also be chatting about one of my favorite shows of all time, Avatar: The Last Airbender, because, spoiler alert, one of the ways that I make art studies fun is by using them as opportunities to make fan art, but I'm getting ahead of myself and there's a lot more to say about this, so let's jump into the time lapse. Welcome to the time lapse, everyone. So I'll start by just talking about what I'm drawing here and why. I basically started doing these drawings while rewatching Avatar. I used to rewatch this show every single year, and last year was the first year I didn't, and maybe that's why last year was one of the worst years of my life. I'm exaggerating, but it was rough. Also, I started drawing Suki before realizing that I actually wanted to do figure studies, so that's why she's the only one that's not a full body drawing. Sorry, Suki. The references I used for these studies were all found on Pinterest, so I'll put them on the screen and I'll also link them in the description for anybody who's interested in checking out the original source. And I ended up spending way longer on these than I expected because I was just having such a good time with them, which brings me to the main core of this video, which is how to enjoy doing art studies and still be actively learning from them, which is their primary purpose. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy watching the time lapse. You will see that some poses were more of a struggle than others, but still I hope that watching it is enjoyable. So for those of you who saw my redraw challenge video that I posted at the end of February, you know that it was a challenge. No, seriously, it was a very humbling experience. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend it, but basically I tried to redraw my first digital artwork and then I completely failed and had to restart, and it was humiliating, but it was also a good learning moment because I realized I needed to start brushing up on my foundational skills again. Something that I know I want to work on is growing my understanding of the human figure so I can get faster at drawing characters while still maintaining an appealing and believable structure. I want to make comics someday, and drawing characters doing all sorts of poses and gestures is a skill that will be really valuable to me when I'm ready to start that journey, which will be soon because I've been putting it off long enough. But sitting down and drawing a bunch of character poses just sounds so boring to me a lot of the time, but that's exactly what I was planning to do while rewatching Avatar, and I just wanted to draw Avatar fan art instead. And then I was like, ¿por qué no los dos? And this isn't like a groundbreaking concept. A lot of other artists just draw fan art while doing figure studies. It's almost an intuitive thing to do if you're someone who makes a lot of fan art. And intuitive is a key word here. I made this decision for these studies because it's what I felt inspired by in the moment. But honestly, I don't usually do this, and I wondered why. And I think it's because there's a part of my brain that tells me I need to separate my art into categories. Like, this thing is for fun, and this is for studying, and this is for work, and this is for YouTube, and so on. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. It's possible I picked it up from art school and freelancing. There were the things that I did purely to fulfill assignments or for client work, and then there were the things I did for myself. I just got used to separating my art like this, and I didn't realize how it affected my workflow overall. It's no wonder I always feel like I'm changing my whole process and my style, because I kind of am. And that was kind of a ramble, but it all leads me to my first tip to make art studies fun. So first things first, do it for yourself. This might seem obvious, but here's what I mean. I feel like a lot of artists, including myself, spend a lot of time studying things and building up skills that really serve not much of a purpose for our own artistic goals. We just study because we're trying to be the unicorn artist that knows how to do everything. And you don't have to do everything. I think it's okay to study any and everything if you're still figuring out your goals, exploring your style, building your foundational skills, but at some point it's probably good to hone in on the specific things that are most important for your own artistic goals. So like I said, I want to make comics one day, so I want to get faster at drawing characters so that making a comic won't completely burn me out. So concentrating on figure studies is really important for me. And maybe you want to be a background artist for animation. So I'd say don't worry about getting super deep into human anatomy if that's not what serves you and your goals to become a background animation artist. I think it's good to have foundations in a lot of subjects, but your work will have more value both professionally and personally if you stay true to what you're really passionate about. At least that's what I think, and it's what I've heard from a lot of industry professionals. I see portfolio reviews by industry professionals on YouTube, and a lot of them talk about how certain people's portfolios are all over the place. They're like, what is your focus? What do you want to do? And that makes a lot of sense. Somehow, for some reason, I and a lot of other artists think that we need to know how to do every single step in any industry process, and that's just not true. And it's also not sustainable, and it's also probably not fun. So make sure that when you're doing art studies, you are doing what will serve you and your artistic goals and your passions. My next tip is to let it flow. Studies are a very important practice for any visual artist, but I think it's also too easy to make it feel really rigid, at least it is for me. Like I said earlier, I tend to segment my art into different categories, so when it comes to my art study sessions, I often think that there's a specific thing I need to achieve during the session, or that I can't let myself get carried away into drawing something else unrelated to what I'm studying. And I can see points where being this rigid could have value, but this video is about making studies fun. So I think that it's okay to intend to study something specific, but if you're in the zone and you start feeling the urge to experiment and do more than what you originally intended, I think it's good to follow that instinct. I've made some of my most prominent stylistic discoveries by experimenting and playing around during my studies, and that even happened in this time lapse. I was originally intending for these studies to just be loose sketches where I focused on capturing the poses, the gesture, the anatomy, but I was having so much fun that I started trying to render them, and I started experimenting with my line art and coloring and trying a slightly different approach for each drawing, and I learned so much, and it feels so enlightening, especially because I've been so all over the place with my style recently. So you've got to remember that doing these practices, these studies, it's meant to serve you and your creative workflow, so follow what's speaking to you. You might end up learning something different than what you were trying to study, but the important thing is that you are learning, you are practicing, so you will get something out of it, even if it's not your original intention. And my final tip is to combine studies with your joy. I kinda already said this, but I will elaborate. I think a key to making studies feel more fun is by using it as an opportunity to depict what makes you feel happy and fulfilled as an artist. I'm personally in a ton of fandoms, and fan art is what got me started in drawing, so combining figure studies with fan art is a no-brainer for me. But maybe for you, you might want to improve your understanding of light and color, so you look up some beautifully lit portraits on Pinterest, but honestly, what you really like doing is drawing cats. So take a cat and draw it in that lighting scenario, and take note of what works and what doesn't, and then do it again. Or maybe you're like countless other artists who have a plethora of OCs and an entire world that mainly exists in your head because you're too scared to turn it into anything tangible. I'm not judging you, that's totally me too. But you can do figure studies with your OCs, you can redraw movie scenes featuring your OCs, do background studies based on what you think the world of your OCs would look like, and this way you're improving your drawing slash coloring slash rendering slash anatomy slash background skills while also slowly bringing your world to life. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but also really important because your stories matter. You never know what influence your work can have on others or the world at large, so I encourage you aggressively, but also with love, to use studies as an opportunity to share your ideas as well. Because at least for me, I have far too often locked myself into the trap of just focusing on improving my practical skills because I need to be perfect before bringing any of my own ideas to life, and it's something that I'm still trying to confront. I totally understand having high standards for the stories you want to tell and the worlds that you want to create. Maybe you think you need to have a perfect understanding of anatomy before you share your OCs with anyone, or maybe you think you need to be an animation master before you start working on the short film that you've been dreaming about. But I promise that it's okay to get started and do little steps on your big projects. There will never be a point where you feel totally ready, so do it scared, but also do it with joy because it makes you happy, because that's what this video is about. I hope that all makes sense. And those are my main tips. I guess the only thing left to do for what's left in the time lapse is to gush about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think it might be the best show ever made. There's really nothing to say that hasn't already been said, actually. Although upon my most recent rewatch, I think Aang is the funniest character. I don't know. There were just so many little lines that he says, and he's not even trying to be funny. One thing that is pretty topical right now is the live-action Netflix adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, so I guess I can talk a little bit about that. I'll say right now, as an animation purist, I went into it believing that it's silly that they even even made it and it shouldn't exist in the first place. And with standards that low, I ended up liking it more than I expected. I have a lot of problems with it, but I was expecting to have problems with it, so I don't have much to say there. I think Drew Gooden's video sums up all my thoughts like really perfectly, so if you want to know my thoughts, just watch him talk, and that's basically everything that I think as well. In terms of things I did like, it was visually stunning. The action sequences were really good for the most part, from what I remember. I think the casting was immaculate. Like, visually everyone looks great, even though I wasn't a big fan of a lot of the character direction. And I say that because I get the feeling that it has more to do with direction than the actor's skills, but that's just the vibe I get as someone who knows nothing about acting or filming a TV show, so my opinion shouldn't really hold any weight on that. I think the best depiction by far was Zuko, and also Zhao, which was kind of random, but I really loved how the actor played it. Like, he just nailed the role for me. And I really like the way that Dallas Liu interpreted Zuko. He's like a bit more whiny compared to the animated version, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. I feel like it makes him more endearing from the start, like, oh, look at this little banished prince. And maybe that's not a good thing in terms of storytelling. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I had fun with it. Again, I don't think this show should have been made in the first place. And this is an actual spoiler, but the scene where it's revealed that the crew that's working for Zuko is the one that he stood up for during the war meeting, that scene was really, really good and really well done, in my opinion, and I bawled my eyes out. I think for fans of the show, there's plenty of things to appreciate and definitely a lot of things to hate on and be disappointed by, but I also see so much love and effort put into certain parts of it, and I know creating a show like this is so difficult. It's really hard for me to fully be a hater of almost any media because there's just so many people and processes and steps involved, so I accept the show for what it is. I like the things that I like. I just, you know, again, I did not need to be made, but it'll be interesting to see how future seasons go. Whoever they get to play Toph, that is going to be a lot of pressure, so I hope that goes well. And if nothing else, I hope the show brings more attention and love to the original because it's a masterpiece. I love this world and the characters so much, so it was really fun rewatching the animated show, and I'm also trying to rewatch Korra, so maybe that'll inspire another video, who knows. And I'm really happy with how these studies turned out. I'm glad that I ended up doing more than I originally planned because I love how the whole page looks all together, and I struggled a lot drawing Azula's pose. It was definitely the hardest for me, but I actually think she turned out the best in the end, or at least I felt really pleased with the whole line art and coloring process, and I'm really pleased with the final result as well. And here's all of the Avatar figures. I hope the process was enjoyable, that my fandom ramblings were entertaining, and I hope my tips inspired you to have some fun with your art studies. Thanks so much for watching. This was a fun one. I am so happy with how everything came together, even though it was more time consuming than I planned. Please let me know which character turned out the best in your opinion. Have you seen the original Avatar series? Have you seen the live action series? What were your thoughts? How often do you do art studies? Do you think they're already fun, or do they feel more like work? What skills are you wanting to improve on for your art goals, and what are your art goals? Let me know anything and everything in the comments. I would love to hear about it. All of my important links and information, like the tools I use, my socials, my BLM art fundraiser, my K-pop dance team, that'll all be down in the description. And if you're interested in going the extra mile and tipping or commissioning me, I do have a Ko-fi page where you can do that. Either is extremely appreciated. And yeah, keep on creating, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!